None of us can avoid using AI at this point, but
Yes.
it's embedded in things. But,
Yes.
you know, I do not actively, use AI. I do not use generative AI. I have attestations on every presentation, every article I write. It's in my email that I don't use generative AI, and for a whole host of reasons. And I think we're November 30th is 3 years of ChatGPT, and I think it's fair to say that OpenAI is a company that has inflicted an awful lot of damage in a very short time. So I have real issues with what's happening, and I just don't think we're doing enough to consider that there's more than one way to look at the AI conversation. I know associations want to go down this pathway, and they have plenty of opportunities to do it, but I also think that there's a need for a lot more reflection and a lot more consideration of what are we actually doing and who are we benefiting in all of this. And having a usage policy is, that's good, but it's not anywhere near enough. I think associations need to get clear first about their own ethical orientation to the future, and then how that ethical orientation applies to AI. And the reason why I say it that way is because what I fear is that we will, if we allow our ethics to be shaped by AI, then our ethics will suffer, as opposed to us saying these are our ethics and we will not cross those lines. And now the AI has to fit to what we believe in. Boards should understand, in my view, that their fiduciary responsibility is larger than them being champions for AI, right? It's not in association context, maybe in other kinds of organizations, maybe in a corporation, a public company or some other kind of context, maybe it's different. But for me, as someone who spent a lot of time working with boards and serving on boards and thinking about boards, I think that, they must understand that their fiduciary duty is to purpose and is to the stakeholders of the organization, and not to the investment in technology. They should be asking harder questions and understanding the implications of those answers before they act as champions. Because if they are acting as champions rather than stewards of the organization and of AI adoption, then they are actually taking the organization down a pathway that may later become very problematic. I think a good question for boards to ask themselves is, especially the associations that have been around for 50 or 75 or 100 years, right? Let's talk about all the value we created before November 30th, 2022, right? We've created a lot of value over many years and decades, and maybe we should be thinking about that. I had the opportunity to go to an AI workshop at Stanford in September that involved civil society leaders and social sector people. I think one of the big questions that came up in the conversations, a lot of people were immersed in AI, they were using AI, but a question that kept coming up was, do we stop and ask the question, do we need to actually use AI for what we're doing, right? Could we simply use other automation techniques that are not AI to accomplish things, right? So we have to ask harder questions. Not everything has to go down this pathway. And so the question that I would like for boards to ask themselves, right, all the time is, what will our successors say about us? I keep asking this question in board meetings and in public presentations, because boards right now we're almost 2026 are actively, you're right, Gretchen, that they are acting, but we need them to think and act in the right way. And thinking in the right way means recognizing that they are at the front edge of creating futures, not for themselves, but for their successors, people that they will never know personally, people who will become part of their organizations later on in this decade and into the 2030s. So for me, that lives at the heart of many other problems with the whole leadership paradigm. So I want us to shift our focus away from leadership and recognize that stewardship is the higher calling for us, to leave our organizations, to leave our systems, to leave our society better than how we found it, is a much different charge and responsibility to boards and to other people than it is to say, how do we win this fiscal quarter, right? And when we talk about AI leadership today, AI leadership, the sum total of AI leadership seems to be, in my view, how quickly can we get this implemented? right? That seems to be what defines AI leadership. And for me, what I want to see from boards in AI stewardship is a recognition of a different question, which is, how do we make sure we do this ethically, purposefully, and responsibly? Like one of the big things I've been saying about the report is we recognize that there are different opinions, but we have to stop allowing different opinions to be the thing that holds us back. We have to use the dissent as a way of energizing our effort, not preventing our effort from moving forward. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the issue of stewardship, is recognizing, really it's two things actually. Recognizing that this is one of the contrasts that I often make with leadership. Not everyone in the organization is going to be a leader. Mm-hmm. Not everyone wants to be a leader. Not everyone will be determined to be capable of being a leader. There'll be a whole host of reasons why there will not be everyone in the organization being a leader. But everyone in the organization can be a steward. Everyone can contribute to leaving the system, leaving the association better than how they found it, right? So if we think about board performance and board, success, having boards be better, having a better present and a better future, part of the way that can be achieved is through a collective effort of everyone in the organization making that happen, right? Boards have a lot of heavy lifting to do. Going forward, but they can't do it alone. They need their staff partners. They need chief staff executives. They need voluntary contributors. They need everyone who works in and with the association to work together to help them succeed with their, performance. And I think that associations who want to influence and shape a different future for their professions or industries would be wise not to try to compete with those who are better resourced and instead find other ways to approach it so that, more subtle ways, more ethical ways, more systems thinking kind of ways, more critical thinking kinds of ways to figure out where can they implement or where can they bring the greatest influence to bear on how the conversation unfolds and choose a different, space in which to operate rather than getting into the, sort of very, very often virulent competition that exists among organizations trying to curry favor. I think what I find exciting, compelling, is that in 2026 and for the rest of this decade, it's never been more important that we have organizations like associations. Right now, the whole rest of the world, really, and every type of organization that exists, maybe with a few exceptions, but by and large, has now given itself over to technology, right? And I've been an advocate for technology, and I believe in the value of technology. What I don't believe in is that we're going to sacrifice our humanity for technology. And what we need from organizations that have the idea, of human beings in the name, right? We associate, right? The whole idea of relationship building and collaboration and just being people is in the name. We have a huge opportunity, for the remainder of this decade into the 2030s to be the ones who advocate for, and I said earlier, the idea of human first, but actually I'm talking about AI, and I'll probably be expanding this to include really all of what boards do. And it was the idea that we talk about the human in the loop in AI, or the human on the loop, depending on where that person is situated in the conversation. Like we have to remind ourselves over and over again, AI is math, not magic, right? It's high order, very complicated, very sophisticated mathematics, statistics, and so on, right? But it's not magic, right? It's not sentient, right? It's computational. Mm-hmm. We have to remember that in all of this. And we are organizations. Our organizations are about human beings and what they value and what they care about and what they want to see for themselves and for their families and children, their communities and their friends and everyone. That's what we need to be focusing on, is how do we become the ones that put humanity at the core in everything that we do, rather than sort of slipping into we are a lesser copy of a Silicon Valley technology company.
I'm ready for